There's something called triadic logic. Triadic logic is a three-valued logic where you have three elements that all relate to each other, and one affects the other two, and so on and so forth. And it's universally workable application. So we took that triadic logic and see how do these three elements work together. What creates financial capital? What creates this optimum financial condition across these 9 elements? Well, the first thing is income. You got to make a ton of income. Financial planning as a profession has never evolved into that side of the equation. You ever notice that? That's for business consultants. That's for marketing gurus to figure out. That's for you to figure out on your own by reading, the business leader books. That's not financial planning. Okay? What is financial planning is expense. How do we expense our money? How many of you love the idea of the term budget? How many of you have that reaction to that word as this is a warm and fuzzy feeling, a budget? Oh, I just love budgeting. It's on a Saturday morning, you get up, instead of watching cartoons, you get to go do budgeting. I just love that. Okay? Well, budget comes from the French word, I think it's budget, which means small purse. How many of you like to live your life with a small purse? You see? So somehow we're going to budget our way to wealth. Illogical, isn't it? And guess what? Here's the thing about logic. If something doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't make sense. Never undervalue your ability to recognize truth in what someone's saying. If someone's trying to give you a whole song and dance as to why you should do something, you're looking at it going, that doesn't make sense. Then it doesn't make sense. Then stop them and say, you're not making any sense. Because it's your money, right? It has to be logical to you. And if it's logical to you, guess what? It's probably going to align naturally with these basic principles anyway. So you already got the basic goods. You're smart people. So expense. Then finally, protection. Protection. Okay. So protection is protecting what you've made. See, half the game in winning financial prosperity is just not losing what you've gained. Just not going backwards. If you just avoid that, you got half the game won. So you'll see right here that to achieve the optimum financial condition, you will notice in the 9 elements an embodiment of these 3 parts, because you will see the optimum financial condition is making up of income, expense, and protection. If you look at the 9 elements, you can see where they fit in. Now, in order to help us understand relative conditions, we have to use tools that go beyond certain levels of logic. Okay, now, if you look at logic, there is Aristotelian logic from Aristotle. And Aristotle said there's yes and no, there's black and white. There's 2 absolutes to any answer, one or the other. That's 2-valued logic. Then you have 3-valued logic, which is called engineering logic. Yes, no, maybe. And that's where computer circuits are made and that kind of application. But then there has to be some level of logic that has different graduated steps between 2 absolutes. Does that make sense? So, for example, in 1933, an author named Alfred Korzybski wrote a book called General Semantics. And when you're talking about human experience, you're talking about everybody's unique perspective in the world and trying to put that into nomenclature, words, to be able to communicate concepts to each other. Semantics, okay? So, for example, he observed that if there are, all the people in the room here, for example, and we all have black on one side and white on the other, and I ask you to get a concept of gray. All of you get a concept of gray. Good. Now, I assure you that your concept of gray is different than yours. It's different than yours, different than yours, different than yours. But we have to use the same word, gray, to explain that. How many shades of gray are there? More than 50. I had to say that. Okay? There's actually an infinite number of shades of gray, right? So this idea of a graduated scale has been used to describe the physical and even the social sciences for years. I'll give you an example. How about a thermometer? Fahrenheit figured out that water at 32 degrees on his scale at sea level would be frozen. Whereas each degree higher, it became less, more liquid form, and up at 212 degrees on his scale, it would boil at sea level. So you have a graduated scale between 32 and 212 to explain the relative temperature of water. Do you see? So what's hot water? Well, it's relative to one of those two, right? Mendeleev, the periodic table of elements, okay, figured out how to codify all the elements by atomic weights. And said, okay, atomic weight of 1 is hydrogen, and atomic weight of like 118 is unoctium. Okay, and there's a graduated scale of atomic weights all the way up the line, a graduated scale. Even in the social sciences, in the book Dianetics, written by author L. Ron Hubbard, he used that scale to measure the relative survival potential of an organism based on a scale of 1 through 4. Okay? So this is universally applicable from the physical sciences and even in the social sciences. So what if we took that type of tool and applied it to your financial experience? Now we have something that plots us between two extremes of where we actually are compared to a very, very non-optimum circumstance and a very optimum one. Does that make sense? So let's take a look at the household income scale, the household expense scale, and the scale of household risk management. So let's take a look at those in your workbook. If you take a look at this PIE triangle, the pie triangle, you'll notice that if you have more income, what do you then need to do? Be more intelligent about how you expense it, which will create assets for you that must be protected, which will create more income, which require better expensing, which creates more protection for more assets. You see how that goes? And you notice that if your income goes down, can you spend money on expense if you have no income? No, you can't. And you have nothing to protect. That's why I have to laugh at people. People come to me sometimes and they have these beautiful trust business plans. I'm like, that's gorgeous. I mean, who put this together for you? This attorney in Seattle? I mean, that's wonderful. It's great. What's in it? What do you mean? Well, what assets do you have? Well, I don't have any assets. You think I make this stuff up. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. After 25 years of doing this, every example I give you is the truth. It's an actual experience I've had with somebody. And some of you are going to go, what? Yeah, I don't have to make this stuff up anymore. It's fascinating what's out there. But that is the fact that these three elements work together. And the whole idea is to keep raising these to the top of the scale so that you have an optimum financial condition. So what is the scale? So let's take a look at the household income scale. If you take a look at this, you'll recognize, you can keep it in your book. I'll go over one at a time. At the bottom, we have the four-letter word scarcity. And when I say four-letter word, that's a bad word. Just for those of you who might be wondering. Okay? And abundance is a good word. Okay? Now, if you're at the top of the scale, you have something called more freedom. How many of you want more freedom? Good. Less freedom at the bottom. So, what you're going to do is you're going to plot where you are on this scale based on the characteristics I'm about to tell you. Okay, so first at the very bottom, we have no income. Person has zero income, nothing. Now, how hard is that to do? Almost impossible, because the government is just freely giving it out. Okay, so that's hard to do. Even a panhandler, you put your hand out, standing on a street corner, someone's going to throw a quarter in there sooner or later, right? So that's very hard to do, almost an absolute. Then you have inadequate funding of necessary living costs. What is that? What's called a necessary living cost? Let's cover that first. Necessary is required, not desired. Okay? So it's basic shelter. What do you need for basic shelter? Besides a refrigerator box? Okay. Efficiency apartment, maybe a trailer, maybe a camper. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. That's necessary, right? Necessary. How about transportation? What do you need for transportation? Bicycle, motorcycle, scooter, simple little car, necessary. How about clothes? Designer? No. Basic stuff, right? That's necessary. If you cannot cover your necessary living costs, guess what? You're at that level of the scale. You just don't have enough money. Okay? Then we move up to inadequate funding of current luxury costs. Now, everything beyond a necessity, regardless of how you define it, is called a luxury. So if you take a basic car, simple, no-frills car, anything above that is your personal level of luxury. Some of you have the desire to have a luxury of a Kia. Some of you desire to have a luxury of a Jeep. Others of you might have the luxury desire of a Mercedes. And still others might have the desire for a Rolls Royce. I do not care. If you can make the money and you can afford it, knock yourself out. But the word here is inadequate funding of luxury costs, which means that you're paying for a lifestyle that you cannot afford. Whoops. If you have credit card debt, if you have a home mortgage, if you have any debt at all in your household, guess what? Inadequate funding of luxury costs. Because a home is a luxury beyond a simple efficiency apartment. See, if you have a home you love and you have a mortgage on it, guess what? You do not have enough funding to cover it. Simple. Okay? That's where we stand. Now, let's move up. Partial funding of current luxury costs plus inadequate reserves to fund defined lifetime goals. What's this? Partial funding. I can pay for my lifestyle by using credit, but I'm putting inadequate reserves away. I'm saving a little bit, but not enough for what I decided was my defined lifetime goals. It may be there. I'm saving a little bit, but I have debt, and that typically is pretty much the average American family right there. I'm saving a little bit in my retirement plan, but I have credit card debt. I'm kind of like trying to meet the bills. That's where you are. Okay, moving up, funding of current luxury costs plus inadequate reserves to fund defined lifetime goals. That level is I'm operating on cash, no debt. Operating on cash and putting some money away for the future. Next one up, I'm paying for all my current luxury costs, plus I'm putting away plenty of money to pay for what my desired lifetime goals are. Now we're moving into a much higher condition regarding income, aren't we? But there's still more above that, isn't there? How about funding of desired luxury costs plus adequate reserves to fund defined lifetime goals? Everything's being funded fully. But the luxury has gone up, desired luxury. Gee, I've always wanted this type of designer's clothes, or I've always wanted to drive this kind of car, or I've always wanted to live here or have a second home. You see what I'm saying? Desired luxury costs. Okay? And then we get to the top, funding of desired luxury costs plus adequate reserves to fund defined lifetime goals plus additional discretionary income. You know what we call that? FU money is what we call that. How many of you would like to have that kind of income? Exactly. Now, do you see where you're plotted on that scale in your condition? And do you see your relative strength or weakness in that area? Does that help explain your condition, your financial condition compared to an optimum? Good. Let's move on to the next one. The household expense scale. You see, the wealth, the financial condition you have, is also going to be based on how intelligently you spend your money, because all your money is going to be spent. That's the fun part of making it. I'm all about it. But all I ask is that we spend our money in ways that actually create more future value as a habit. So we have to discern about how we are investing our money. So down here is waste. Up here is thrift. Thrift is not a bad word. Thrift means intelligent and economic spending. If you spend your money on these things, you will have more future income and net worth. Anybody interested in that? Good. If you spend your money on these things, less future income and net worth. Okay, so let's go for and there's a make-break point that every household goes through. On the lower end of the scale, you will see here necessary expenses. When you all get up in the morning and go to work, do you not need toothpaste, toothbrush, shaving gear, clothes, food, transportation, right? Those are necessary things to get you to a point you can go produce without offending everybody. Then you have luxury expenses. Luxury expenses are those things that we like because they provide us joy and comfort above the necessary. But we get trapped in that, don't we? Because now we get into interest expenses. If we cannot afford the luxury expense with cash, what do? 90 days, same as cash. Or go ahead and borrow it. Or it's a good idea to have a mortgage. And all these other things that we're told to justify the fact that we are spending more value than is being created. And do you see it's a dwindling spiral. It's a slippery slope. Because then we move into tax expenses. Because income taxes you pay do not go to create more value in the economy. They don't. So that is a waste, is it not? All the taxes you pay are actually a waste on the income tax side. And then malinvestment. What is malinvestment? Bad investment. Investment is putting money into something to get something greater in return. So malinvestment will be doing that badly. Such as, have you ever bought something you never used? Isn't that malinvestment? Because you buy certain things because you think it's going to improve the quality of your life, or your comfort, or your happiness, or pleasure. So if you don't use it, we took something of value and did not get the value out of it. So what happens when you do that all day? We lose value, right? So we have to avoid losing value with our exchanges, our transactions. And this gets as simple as going to Starbucks. Okay? Is a $4.50 chai latte, $4.65 now, chai latte, worth that exchange? Some of you say, no way. Some of you say, going, you kidding me? It is. Totally is. But if as long as you're not paying for it on a credit card, I don't care. You see what I mean? So that's that side. Now let's get cheery and happy about things, okay? Because you see, there is a positive side. If you start allocating your money into reserves and savings, what is that? What's reserves and savings? Putting money aside in a bank account and not spending it. That's it. Is that hard to do? No. You're damn right it's hard to do. Except Sheila. But you're over the hump. It was hard in the beginning, I remember. Okay? But once you get over the hump of making that a habit, then it's easy. But the problem is making it a habit. Because every piece of communication that comes down your gullet every single day is live for today. Spend it all because you're going to be taken care of. How many of you see the truth in that one? Yes. How about investment-grade investments? Investment-grade investments are those things that are designed to guarantee the money you invest, to preserve that. And if you make some gain, good for you. That's investment grade. Okay? And we're going to talk about this in detail as we go along. Then we have speculative grade investments. What are those? Money spent on things that may or may not go down in value up or down in value in the short term, but over the long term will create more value, like your own business or investment markets, stocks, bonds, things like that. Now, what are the top two things you can spend your money on to create the maximum return? Executive and technical acumen. What is that? As a private practice professional, you learn how to be the top-notch practitioner, the innovator, and the executive rock star. And you train yourself and your staff on how to do that, you'll create more wealth for yourself than any saving will ever do for you. Okay? And then finally, knowledge and application of financial and economic laws. Any book, any course, anything that gets the dings in, this is true, this is true, this is true, based on, like, for example, stay out of debt. Any book that you could read that reminds you, stay out of debt, stay out of debt, stay out of debt, is that a good investment if you do it? It's worth millions. That one little idea is worth millions to you. You see? Here's the interesting thing about it, is this information is actually free. It's free. Well, with the exchange of time to go find it and the interest. But it's all readily available information. It's just bringing it together so it can be used. Do you see what I mean? Kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, finally, we have the protection part of the triangle. The protection is about protecting from these 89 different risks. And basically, would you all agree that the best, highest quality financial plan for you would be that plan that mitigated or lessened the most risks to the greatest possible degree? Would you look at it that way? Good. And if you're doing that, then you have these characteristics. Less chance of loss, less frequency of loss, less severity, more protection. And if you violate those rules, you're going to have a plan that will cause loss, which is, unfortunately, the default financial plan. To come back to that. Okay, so those are the three elements, and you can plot where you are on each of these scales, can you not? How you spend your money, how much income you make, and how you protect it, and that determines your condition. If you're at the top of the scale across the three, you can teach me. You see? So, that is PIE. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little simple income exercise here. Okay? And this is a little aphorism that I put together to kind of explain a simple concept. People adjust their lives based on the amount of income they make, rather than adjusting the income they make to the life they want to live. The idea of financial planning is not about, oh my gosh, let's be careful about how we spend our money. You should be in a position where you don't care how you spend your money. Do you get the difference? Because you have so much income coming in, you could just let it fall off the side and be like, I don't care. Okay? I got a friend of mine who, I don't know, he probably makes maybe $10 million a year, personal income, doing what he does. If he has a few $100s just fall out of his pocket down the street, do you think he just gives a second look? No. Where does he care? Just money. How many of you would like to be in a position where you have more of an attitude like that than, oh my God, we spent money, we shouldn't have done it? Exactly. Okay, good. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start dreaming with me a little bit. We're going to do a little exercise. So, in your course pack, you have this income requirements goal here. Income requirements. What I want you to do is I want you to list out 5 to 7 of the most important things you want to do while you're on this earth. These are goals. These are not purposes. Now, for example, I want to educate my kids is not a goal. I want to send them to a 4-year private school. That's a goal. See the difference? Definable, definite, clear, and practical. So write 5 to 7 things you want to get done while you're on this earth. Now, I'm going to give you a couple other points. If you want to get out of debt, that's a goal because there's a finite, definite end, right? If you want to accumulate, if you want to generate X dollars of income without having to spend your time or attention on getting it, then I'll give you a simple mathematical equation. For every $50,000 you want to generate an income that does not require your time, attention, or energy, you must have $1 million. We'll just say that as a general blanket statement, okay? So if you say, my goal is to have $200,000 of income that does not require my time, attention, or money, or energy, then that's the goal. Make sense? So write down your 5 to 7 most important things you want to do. I want you to include self-improvement, education, lifestyle, children's needs, career, recreation, charitable inclinations. Many of you want to make big donations to charities, things like that. But write that down, 5 to 7 in the left side here. Go ahead and do that. Okay? So you have a goal. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whatever that goal is for you. Now notice the last statement. The amount of income you make today has no influence on the statement of these goals. We make the error of, again, violating this principle. We make the error of, gee, if I can afford it. Forget that. Name your goal. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it costs $10 million. I don't care. That's not the point here. Break out of the economic box a little bit and think about the life you want for you. All right? 5 to 7 goals. Now, once you have these 5 to 7 goals listed, then I want you to determine how much money do you need to have to pay for that goal. Do not worry about inflation, interest rates, any complexities. Nope, just in today's dollars, how much do you need? 4-year college education for the kids, $200,000. Cruise around the world for a year, $100,000. Having money fall out of your pockets when you're walking down the sidewalk, priceless. And not caring, of course. Okay? If you want to have $200,000 of income, guess how much money you need? $4 million. And when I say the word million from now on, don't look at me like, oh my God, it's a lot of money. It's not a lot of money. It was back in 1930, but it's not today. Just a number. All right, so define your goal. If you cannot put a numerical value on it, then readdress the goal. Is it a clear, definite thing that you can achieve? Or is it a purpose? People will end up writing purposes down and say, well, I can't figure out how to pay for this because it's not a goal. A purpose is I want to watch baseball. A goal is I'm going to go get season tickets to the Dodgers. And that has an economic value. You see the difference? So be definite. And you'll know you're definite when you can put a price tag on it. A numerical value. That's where math comes in handy. Okay, then once you figure that out, then I want you to figure out the number of years from today that you want to achieve that goal. So let's say, for example, Christopher, I want to generate $200,000 of income without me having to exchange my time, attention, and energy for it in 10 years. Great. So we know that $200,000 in income is $4 million, and it's going to be done in 10 years. I want college paid for to the kids. That is going to be $200,000, and that's going to be in 4 years. If you want to revisit this later, that's totally fine. Okay, then once you figure out the amount needed and the number of years until you want to achieve that goal, then you just take this, divide it by this, and it tells you the annual savings. So if you want $4 million in 10 years and you're starting at 0, guess what? You got to figure out how to save $400,000 a year. That's not a typo. If you want to pay for college education for $200,000 in 4 years, how much you need to save? $50,000 a year. You see how that is? Go all the way down. Once you get down here, add them all up. Get the sum of all the annual savings you need. Go right on down and get the subtotal of all of the money that you need to save and put away to pay for these goals. Once you do that, then take that number and multiply it by 1.25. So you can pull your phones out, pull the calculator app up. 1.25. Why? Because to make that money, you got to pay taxes on it. Right? So take the sum times 1.25. That's the tax cost. Then you add your current lifestyle expenses. Let's say you're spending $100,000 a year to live. You add that on, current lifestyle, and then you have a grand total. Grand total. Now, when you're done, please raise your hand real quickly so I can see that someone's getting it done. Okay? Good. Just a couple more minutes here. This is the essence of time. Okay, so let's review very quickly, okay? We have our goal listed, the amount needed to achieve that goal, an actual dollar amount, the number of years from today in which you want to achieve that goal. Take the number of years divided into the amount needed, tells you the annual savings you must make. Add all that up, multiply it by 1.25 to add the additional tax cost onto it. Then add the current lifestyle expenses, what it actually costs you to live the life you're living now. Then you have a grand total. Now, by the looks on some of your faces, you're looking at going, huh? Right? There's more zeros there than I can count. Exactly. Exactly. As you've gone through this exercise, how many of you have discovered a number far greater than your current income? Okay, good. There's a reason why I wanted you to go through that exercise. Because that is the amount of income you require for your goals. And you set those goals. No one else did. And you know there's an economic component to the achievement of those goals. So that's your personal income requirement. Now, I want to go one step further. For those of you who own a private practice, take that number and divide it by 0.3. Divide that number by 0.3. Okay, now why would we do that? The income demand that you have to pay for your life goals and your current living is the number that you came up with. If you divide it by 0.3, that tells us roughly the gross income required by your professional practice to achieve at a 30% profit margin, or what comes into the household, to pay to be able to attain that amount of income. Now, how does that compare to your current gross income of your practice? Higher? Lower? OMG? Okay? But you see, here's the thing. If you go along saying 100 grand a year is enough for me, then don't look back at the end of your life and go and see it, gee, I just couldn't afford it, what I really wanted to do. But if you sit there and say, I really want to do this, it's going to cost me $1 million. Then go make the $1 million. You already have all the tools to do it. That's the interesting thing about it. It's just the idea, the expectation, the decision. I need to make 10 times more than I'm making. Then go make 10 times more. All you got to do is take what you're already doing and multiply it by 10. That's the simplicity of it. You see how it works? But first is a decision. We have to make this money because these goals are more important to me than the crap that I got to deal with to get through it to get them done. That's what financial planning really is. Do you see? That's why a financial plan is so critically important, because the first shot in the chin you're going to get the minute you leave here is going to derail you off of your goals and the economic requirements to achieve them. And that's why the plan is consistently put in and put in and put in on an ongoing basis. So you can weather those shots on the chin and keep going anyway, because it's more than what you're used to. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So if you need more help than that, we can certainly help you. But I want to move on in the essence of time so that we can go on to other parts that make up our financial prosperity. The next triangle is called the human capital triangle. Now, back in, I think it was the 70s, three economists, Bodie, Samuelson, and Miller, wrote a paper about the lifetime value of human labor. And they basically came up with three components that determine how much income a person will make during their lifetime. And A is for ability, one's ability. The T is the training, or quality of one's training. And E is experience, and what one generates on the job, and the experience that they get, and what more value they create. And this basically sums up lifetime income potential. So if you want to make the amount of money that we just decided that we needed to make to achieve our goals, then we must focus on those things that create that income in our own lives. And these are the three things: ability, training, and experience. So, in essence, what we're looking at here is another level of interconnecting parts. What happens is that one has a certain level of ability. Then you get trained. Now, training is different than education. Education is a general knowledge. Training is learning and drilling a specific procedure to get a result. Very different thing. So training is what creates results, okay? So you have ability, you have the innate ability, intelligence, bias, inclination to be a professional in your profession. So you go get trained for a number of years at a professional school. Then you get out and start practicing, which creates experience. And then what happens then? You have more ability, which allows you to take advanced training, which gains even more experience, to the point where you are unconsciously competent. Do you see? And if you do that in the three roles of the private practice millionaire, you win the game. So training must be on the practitioner side, which has already been done for the most part, the executive side, and the owner side, which will, of course, give you greater experience and greater ability. Do you follow? And look, even if you lose your practice and you're a trained owner, executive, and practitioner, do you care other than the minor inconvenience? No. You just go and start another one because you already know how to do it. See what I mean? That's wealth. That's ability. And that's where lifetime income potential comes from. The only flaw in the paper was that these guys, economists, said ability was fixed. It's not. Of course, they use that for Social Security, so that's probably why they had that point of view. But we do not, because we're not in that game. We're above that game. So the last part that makes up our prosperity is called the social capital circle. Now, this becomes a very important part. I'm sorry, let me back up real quick. There's a scale about the human capital, lifetime income. You'll notice here that there are different professions listed on the left side. People who are Social Security recipients receive a low level of income, have low potential. Then you go move up the line, and guess where you stand? Entrepreneur business owners in startup phase, those of you less than 5 years of business ownership, and entrepreneur business owners in professional practice, in established practice. That's where you're at. you're at the upper level. And what happens is that you have the highest income potential of anybody in our society, just based on how you deploy your human capital and how you improve your ability. It's that simple. Okay? That's why I do not care how much income you're making now. You can make infinitely more. Every one of you. Okay, good. Let's move on to social capital circle. S stands for social capital circle. What is that? This determines the quality of the results that you get. You are going to be working with people that are going to help you in the achievement of your goals. The quality of those people and the quality of the information and advice they give will make you or break you. Can you see that? So this social capital is the quality of your connections. Okay, it's a relative quality of your associates, friends, family, colleagues, and advisors as manifested by results. Okay? That's very important. Very important. Because have any of you ever tried to work with somebody who's trying to do you in? Yeah? What kind of result did you get there? Good one or bad one, right? A bad one. Exactly. How much did that cost? Exactly. So there is actually a little mnemonic. A mnemonic, M-N-E-M-O-N-I-C, a mnemonic is a simple alphabetical saying to clarify a concept. So I have created the Private Practice Millionaire mnemonic. Okay? And here's what it is. If you want to be a private practice millionaire, then you must eat pies. Financial capital, expense, human capital, experience, ability, training, financial capital, protection, income, and expense, and have a good social capital. So if you want wealth, eat pies. For those who have created wealth, guess what happened? You ate pies. That's how I want you to remember these three elements of financial prosperity.